Hello, this is Vano speaking. So, this is happening. The event horizon, the prophecy, is going to be fulfilled. Regain a dating sim minigame in Limbus company. Kinda. Maybe. Not really. I'm not entirely sure. The new Intervallo teaser really fired up my neurons, I guess. Something similar happened to me when the LCB checkup trailer dropped. I thought there is a chance that we'll get a low-res dungeon crawler in the game. Maybe something similar to Danganronpa, where you'd go around the building and talk with cutouts, but in a PS1 kinda aesthetic. And now I'm really hoping that we'll get an actual new game mode, in the form of a stat-raising minigame. Maybe all of the stuff was made specifically for the teaser, but come on, it looks so detailed, it has to be in the game. Hopefully. I'll be somewhat upset if it won't make it in. We'd still get an Intervallo, I guess, but if it really comes with the minigame, then it's going to be the best Intervallo by default, no contest. Like, this is a historical moment where we get actual new gameplay since Season 1. That's 2 years with the same exact content we've always had, just repackaged into different flavors. Ever since release, we've only had main story, excavations, mirror dungeons, and railways. And events, I guess. The only repeatable content that we had that you don't just play once and never come back to are excavations, which people skip anyway, and mirror dungeons. Sure, you can go back to railways and lower your turn count for that shiny banner, or just play it for the hell of it, but I feel like the majority of players do it once to get the rewards and that's it. And you can do main story solos, challenge runs, ID testing, whatever. But we've been stuck with essentially the same stuff for a long time already. And I believe that this Intervallo is the first step towards a better experience. That potential minigame will probably occupy the same purpose as the claw minigame in Uma Musume. Did they add the option to play it anytime you want into global? I dropped the game after Kita-san Black released, so I wouldn't know. I think the Japanese version got that feature pretty early. Oh, speaking of horse game, many people immediately started to compare the Intervallo to career mode in Uma, and I mean, it is the hottest new gacha game on the market right now, so of course people would think about it. Maybe Kim Ji-hoon decided to capitalize on the fans to squeeze out some more funds? Probably not. In a June 2025 roadmap livestream, the director presented the working title for the Intervallo as Hierarchs Maker, which is a direct nod to Princess Maker, a game where you raise your daughter to become a princess. Some people immediately found similarities with that series in a presentation of the teaser, but I haven't played the games, so I wouldn't know. I personally was more reminded of Tokimeki Memorial, where you also grind stats, but to date girls instead of raising a daughter. Or a little sister, I guess. A bit weird now that I think about it. I really hope we get the mode regardless. But even if we don't, this kinda opens the discussion of how stale Limbus had become in terms of variety. And I want this video to have more of a positive tone, in contrast to the previous one. It's funny how I don't like Conlu and he kills Xichun in his Uptai story, but now I immediately praise the Intervallo and it's focused around Xichun. The boundary between it's so over and we're so back is indeed a thin one. Anyway, over the course of my journey with Limbus, I thought about what new game modes the game could use for it to become more fun. The priority here is to think of repeatable content that will provide a unique experience compared to other game modes and, preferably, doesn't take too much effort to implement. The team at PM is already stretched thin, I'd imagine. There was an idea of a board game roguelike game mode thrown around by Kim Ji-hoon on that same roadmap stream. He was concerned that the players didn't really have anything to do with their older identities, since they're becoming more and more obsolete with the intentional power creep. Over the course of this game mode, you'd get access to weak identities at the start that you can swap out for stronger ones later. There was also a mention of a global bi-weekly raid boss, but we don't know anything beyond that. Or maybe there were mentions of other game modes in other streams, but I only remembered this one though. The director's board game idea is a bit too vague to discuss in detail, only speculate about, so I'm not gonna dwell on that. The raid boss idea is interesting though. We can see the concept be implemented in a number of gacha games that have some kind of guild system. People fight one or several bosses as a team, earn rewards, and improve the guild's ranking for even more rewards. This mode can also come in a solo version, where it individually rank against other players. I imagine that you'd get several attempts for this mode, where the team that you've used in the previous attempt will not be usable for the subsequent ones. Perhaps the number of attempts will depend on how many unique teams you can build with all of your identities, but that would encourage you having all the IDs in the game at their max uptime and level, which is asking a lot, so that's unlikely, I think. In terms of designing the actual bosses for this, maybe PM can introduce a weekly rotation of story bosses that have infinite HP and get scaling buffs depending on turn count or how much HP they've lost. You'd rank on the leaderboard based on how much damage you've dealt and get rewards based on that. And these bosses could be tweaked in a way where certain teams hold the advantage, like how Hohenheim's shield is pretty weak to Burn and Rupture, that kind of stuff. That way, there's no universally dominant team for every boss that you would use to clear the mode. However, this introduces another problem. If there's going to be a game mode that utilizes a leaderboard or introduces some kind of competitive PvP aspect to the game, then people would slowly gravitate towards using particular units that are best suited for the mode, forming a meta. And that's somewhat fine by itself, but if the rewards for taking first place in such a mode will be enticing enough, then that will introduce a whole new set of problems. In a PvP-centric game like Uma Musume, where most valuable rewards like gacha currency are located inside PvP modes, it is highly incentivized to pull only on the banners that have meta-defining support cards, like Kitasan Black. If you're instead spending your currency on stuff that you actually want, like new characters, then you're intentionally ruining your chances of scoring high in leaderboards and earning more currency. And sure, you can just run meta cards in the friend slot, but over the course of the game's lifespan, this friend slot is going to be more and more contested, while you don't have the rest of your deck up to snuff because you wanted to actually enjoy the game. If you decide to ignore PvP, then more power to you, I'd do the same, but then you're not getting the rewards that come from competing there. I guess you also save carrots that you would have spent on support cards if you decided to participate, but that's besides the point. If the rewards for this hypothetical Limbus Guild solo raid leaderboard game mode thing are too good, like lunacy or extraction tickets, then people would be compelled to prioritize making the best teams specifically for this game mode, so that they get high placements and maximum amounts of goodies. Considering the random nature of the game, only the most persistent will get the most rewards, since it's not real hard to put together a meta team when a dispenser exists. More importantly, this will severely limit the amount of viable teams for the game mode, limiting team building. You just need to slap on the most high damaging guys you have and you'll place pretty well already. Another thing is that new gacha units that are really powerful will be in high demand because of that 1 week sharding restriction, which will make people want to pull for that identity if it means getting more rewards from PvP. Because of that, any game mode that features competitive online elements needs either to limit the rewards to something that is easily farmable or not include any rewards at all. Maybe a banner for bragging rights, but that's it. What you can also do is have the best rewards be assigned to set requirements that are independent of the leaderboard, and then give smaller bonuses for higher placements, like Fred or EXP tickets. Just make it so players don't have to use Enkeflin to enter the mode. Otherwise, it puts into question the viability of other game modes like Luxcavations. But alright, I've spoken enough on how this and that should or should not be done. Let me actually offer some of my own ideas for new game modes. And since I've been talking about PvP, I'll start with how I would like this mode to be implemented in Limbus. So, you know Envy Pikachu, those guys that mimic Sinner IDs? What if those guys were IDs that another player put against yours? A Mirror World Dante decides to train his sinners against other versions of themselves that are under the command of another Dante. Seems pretty plausible, no? PvP modes and gachas that I've played don't exactly offer the most interactivity. They're pretty removed from the core gameplay and are sometimes watered down to straight up auto battles. However, the turn-based nature of Limbus may offer a unique way to play the game, like fighting battles that were basically crafted by the community. Here's how it would work. You'll have two teams, one for defense and one for offense. The defense team is the team that will appear as an enemy encounter for other players in PvP battles. They'll fight just like how Envy Pikachu will fight with no input of your own. It would be awesome to have live battles between managers, but I don't know how that will work both mechanically and technically. Anyway, your defense team will have a team rating. This rating will be determined by what IDs and ego you choose for your sinners. Every ID and ego will have their own numerical value that should somewhat match their strength. Like if LCB Faust would have a rating of 20, while Mao Faust would have a rating of 100. Your overall team rating will put you in a bracket that encompasses a range of ratings. These brackets will determine which teams will be allowed to fight your team. For example, if we have several rating brackets and your team with the rating of 1000 fits the bracket that encompasses all defense teams whose ratings are, let's say, between 800 and 1200, then only players whose offense team fits within this rating bracket will be allowed to fight against you. This means that if you want to use a low rating team consisting of older IDs, then you're free to do so. Offense teams are evidently the ones that you actually use to play the game mode. You create a team, it gets put in a bracket according to its rating, you're shown a selection of players that you can fight, and then you go into battle, complete it, and get your leaderboard ranking updated. Leaderboards will be exclusive to each bracket. You will be able to change teams and subsequently change brackets at any time, but you will lose the ranking that you had previously and have to start again. This is so that people don't abuse the system by hopping between brackets and claiming all the rewards, while removing their defense teams so that they don't lose their placement. There's the option of allowing people to compete in all brackets simultaneously, but that would again encourage having almost every ID in the game, so that you can build the best teams possible for everything and get the most rewards. There's also the issue of balancing, since offense teams are at an inherent advantage by the nature of being controllable, and the game mode has to be tweaked constantly because of new ID releases that will unearth new synergies and thus raise the power of other IDs and ego, making assigned rating values inaccurate. But I do believe that the concept is promising and will make for a solid reason for people to play the game in a more engaging manner, encouraging diverse team building and unorthodox strategies while being a unique draw for newcomers that crave a solid PvP experience in a gacha game. Just make sure that the rewards are not too plentiful, so as to not make people who are not really interested in PvP feel like they're missing out. But alright, at its core, Limbus is a single-player live service narrative experience. Enhancing those aspects should be the logical way of improving the game. So, let's make a mode that utilizes main story content while making gameplay much more engaging and difficult. Welcome to Fracture Invasion. In this mode, mirror world versions of prominent main story bosses are trying to invade your world for one reason or another, similar to how Earl King hopped from one reality to another. They are very similar, but at the same time different from their original versions. How different? You will decide that. This is basically a boss fight with modular adjustable difficulty, inspired by Hades and other games where you can change certain aspects of the game to make it more difficult. This mode will feature a weekly or bi-weekly rotation of bosses that you can fight and whose fights you can tweak to make them harder. You'll be able to choose from a selection of modifiers that enhance certain aspects of the fight, like adding offense and defense level, assigning the enemy a certain sanity value, or even having them start the fight in their second or third phase. PM can even add unique additional mechanics to these modifiers, making the fight a completely different experience altogether. The possibilities are numerous, and if you take enough of these modifiers and complete the fight, you'll get scaling rewards based on how many and which modifiers you've taken. The developers can assign point values to each modifier to determine which of these will be more impactful for moving towards a reward threshold. This game mode will utilize already existing content and won't take up too much of PM's development time for creating assets and new enemies. It also will give me a chance to craft a fight similar to pre-nerf Weihang, which I crave to this very day. I will officially proclaim Limbus to be the best gacha game of all time if they return this handsome gentleman to his former glory. And also this will give me something to do that is not mirror dungeons, which is always a plus. There are other ideas that I have that are not as fleshed out as the previous two. One of them is an infinite gauntlet that will have an unlimited amount of waves of various enemies that you fought before. Those can be normal and focused encounters, abno fights, bosses, whatever. You'll be able to test the limits of your team in this endurance game mode, where your IDs don't reset and keep their statuses, HP, sin resources, and pretty much everything throughout the waves. One of my favorite moments in the game was 6-41, where there was a seemingly unending amount of enemies. I want something similar in Limbus, so this is a game mode that would be pretty cool, at least for me. Another mode that honestly should have been in the game from the start is a training mode. You get a stage with enemies that don't attack and have unlimited HP, and you can test your identities to your heart's content. As of this moment, the only reliable way we have of testing the potential damage capabilities of teams is through enemies with immortality stages, like Have You Become Strong or Gas Harpoon Ahab. It's honestly not really convenient when such enemies are available only in story or mirror dungeons or on certain days of Redwall excavation. PM can also add some quality of life features to this mode, like giving the ability to change an enemy's resistance, or staggering them at the press of a button, making them attack, adding or removing skills from an identity skill deck, etc. And I guess any additional ways of playing the game would be appreciated. Minigames, unique event mechanics, honestly anything at this point. I'd be really glad to have an excuse to play this game more that does not involve going to the MD mines for an upteenth time. If we will really get that Xichun minigame from the teaser, then it's a step in the right direction for Limbus. Sure, we'll probably get bored of it rather quickly, but this should spark in players a hunger for new ways of playing the game, and hopefully, Project Moon will listen to our pleas and make the game even better than it had ever been. That is all from me. You can leave a comment suggesting your ideas for a potential game mode for Limbus. Maybe there's a feature that you'd really like to be implemented. I'd love to hear your suggestions, regardless of how impactful or self-serving they may be. This time, I sincerely ask you to share this video so that a conversation may be started on this topic. Leave a like to promote it in the algorithm so that more people see this. Subscribe if you really enjoyed the video and want to see more from me. And have a good day. Bye bye.